Hi, this is Steve Sansweet, President and Chief Executive of Rancho Obi-Wan, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
I need to make a speech tomorrow.
They'll never let you take the floor.
I've seen you work miracles before. Has to be done, Bale. I can't take it anymore. And yes, I know there's no telling what the Emperor's capable of at this point. Anything is possible, but they've gone too far and we all know it.
Excuse me, we have an immediate problem. Did you talk to Mothma? What are we doing?
I shouldn't have told her about Erskine.
Is she speaking or not?
I don't know.
And the monster screaming the loudest, the monster we've helped create, the monster who will come for us all soon enough, is Emperor Palpatine.
Hello. If I've offended you, I apologize. If not, I'd appreciate you pointing that elsewhere.
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
It's time, finally, to talk about Welcome to the Rebellion, the 9th episode in Season 2 of Andor. I am your host, Dan Zare, and today I am joined by two veteran guests of not only Coffee with Kenobi, but podcast. One of my guests even has her own very popular Star Wars podcast. Let's bring him in first. The matriarch of the CWK Cafe, Mary Perdue.
Hey, Dan.
How's it going?
It's going well. It's a little hot down here in Florida, but it's hot everywhere. So, we're coping.
Well, it's good. I'm glad we got to chat a little bit briefly during the CWK Mouse Fan Travel Disney Wish experience. And you were, as always, we joked about herding cats. You herded all of us. And it was so much fun to kind of see you with all of us.
Yeah, that was a great time. And I love it when people come down here now that I'm down in the vacation capital of the U.S. To be able to get to see friends and family that honestly you never get to see unless they come to visit, kind of a thing. And now they come to visit the mouse or they come to visit Epic. And I kind of wiggle my way into the vacation time.
Well, I'm so glad that you do. Also joining us, Jay Krebs has returned to Coffee with Kenobi. Jay, of course, you and Dennis have your wonderful podcast. It's so good to have you back on the show.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. And Mary, it's so good to see and talk to both of you. It's been a while, and it's always such a pleasure to be on CWK. This is where I started with the blogs and with you, Dan, and just with the whole community. And so I treasure all the connections that I've made with everyone. And so it's always just such a treat to be back on the show. So thanks for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. And Podcast Stardust is a must listen. You and Dennis are so busy, 3 shows a week. I continue to just marvel at that and the amount of editing that goes into that. But you neither of you show any signs of fatigue, but just pure joy of Star Wars. And that's what we love and what we need.
Oh, Dennis does all the heavy lifting. I'll tell you what, he does all the editing. He is the bomb.com. I'm mainly along for the ride. You would probably say, oh, no, you're not. But he needs some major props. But we have a lot of fun. We call it our appointment Star Wars. So we're up over 900 episodes now. So
amazing.
Yeah,
Absolutely
having tons
amazing.
of fun.
Oh my gosh, tons of fun. Well, this one, I don't know if I'll say this episode is tons of fun, but it is. Well, it's a lot of things. So we're going to break it down. Mary, we're going to start with you. Please give me one word to describe Welcome to the Rebellion and sort of your overall thoughts on this pivotal episode.
Okay. I put a lot of thought in this. I rewatched it yesterday after you contacted Jay and I about being on today. And I really bounced around a lot of different words. And I came up with a hyphenated word. I'm sure Mason would approve. In eye-opening. I thought it was eye-opening for Mon to actually see what was going on with the rebellion as far as what the people on the ground were having to do to push this rebellion forward. I thought it was eye-opening for Cassian to also kind of see what the overall arch has been, that he has been this trip that he's been on since he was 6 years old, and then wanting to give it up. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. And then eye-opening for Bix as well, from the previous episode, meeting with Force Healer, to now all what has happened, and Mon's speech and so forth. I just think it was an eye-opening time for so many of them.
Very well said. Jay, what would you say your one word is? We've got eye-opening, and I know Corey is like, never lets us do hyphenated things on CWK Pour-Over, but he's not here, so we're just going to stick with it.
I said Mason approved.
Yes, Mason does approve.
That's too funny. So eye-opening is a great one. I would definitely have to say pivotal. Every single one of these episodes has been pivotal in its own way in terms of new revelations and eye-opening things, as you said, Mary. But I think for this one, right after the Gorman Massacre, there's just so many things happening. I mean, you've got Cassian wanting to leave the rebellion and questioning his place in the whole thing. You've got Mon Mothma, who is now basically becoming, a fugitive against the Empire. You've got, Bail Organa, who is also in a very pivotal moment here. We've got Bix, who ends up leaving because she feels like Cassian is so much better off doing the rebellion without her, because she knows he won't. So, it's, and to borrow the code word from Ahsoka, it's a fulcrum point. It's a balance, it's a teetering. So it's very pivotal in so many different ways.
I like that you brought up the word fulcrum, because I think that's an important way to look at this as well. If I could say, this is beautiful, it's a masterpiece. I'm sort of cheating right now by throwing out other words that were rough drafts for this, but to me, the word is symbolism. There is so much symbolism in this episode, and I'm not sure. I know I didn't catch it the first time I watched it, but fortunately, this second viewing, or this additional viewing, really brought to light how powerful this is. We already know it's powerful because of Mon Mothma's speech and what's at stake and how everything completely changes. It's the fulcrum. It's eye-opening. And it's so incredible, so well done, that we have to talk about it. So, Mary, let's start with you. What's a key point? You can go in any order of what happens in the episode. The only thing we're not going to do is talk about episodes 10, 11, and 12, because we're just going to go through each one, as you know, and just give it its own merit because it's so strong on its own.
Well, I think the thread with Luthen, meeting up with Mon, letting her know that things are going to get tricky, and then him meeting up with Cassian, and then seeing Clea always there to sort of propel things forward. Like, we said herding cats earlier with us, but sometimes that seems like that has been Clea's job, is to herd this rebellion together. And we kind of see her do that with Luthen and with Cassian, and then later, with Mon, just kind of keeping things together. And I know that's not one specific thing, but it just seems like that it's this continual arc of the play of between Luthen and Clea, and then how they're steering everything that's going on, especially during this episode, figuring out who's where, who's saying what's happening with the speech, how are we getting Mon out of there, all of that. And those two are really gearing up and pushing forward what's happening through this entire episode, even though we don't see them a lot.
So he is so important. Luthen Rail is so important in this because his style, which is probably an interesting way to describe it, is very unorthodox for a normal human relationship and interaction. It's not one that can be built on trust, although he's probably the most trustworthy person in the rebellion because of all the secrets he keeps. Now, the problem with Luthen, of course, is that he is in many ways the judge, jury, and executioner. And there's reason for it. He's not cold-blooded, but he does what he has to because of the tyranny and the oppression that is the Empire and their sway over the galaxy. And, Mon Mothma recalls in a pivotal scene when she talks with Luthen. We don't get to see them talk very much in this season, but when we do, it really counts. And she basically brings up her childhood friend, laments what has happened to him, and he doesn't apologize for that. But then she starts to think, well, how do I know that I'm not going to be dispensable someday? Now, whether she believes that or not, it's hard to say. I just think she's very complex. Their relationship is complex. And what they're fighting for is more complicated than any of that. So it's just a really great piece of human drama that is cultivated by Luthen's approach that is based on paranoia, but it's also based on a long-term plan that is very, very hard to keep focus, and why so many people have a hard time. And he has a hard time being close to anyone.
Yeah, even Clea. I mean, they've had, and what I appreciate about what you just said, Dan, is that the whole idea of trust, and with Luthen, it's not necessarily, yes, it's about trust, but he's a realist. And he's, in a lot of ways, you can almost compare him to Palpatine in that he's playing a long game. Mm-hmm. He's playing it on the side of the rebellion as opposed to the side of oppression. And, so to build on what you said as well, and I'm just kind of jumping in here, so I apologize, but to build on what you said, Mary, and what you said, Dan, my whole theme is trust in this episode, and just understanding things that you see that go on behind the scenes that are happening because they need to, doesn't mean you need to see them to know that they're working. And so you mentioned Clea, Mary, and, and I think of even people like Wilman and, all of those people behind the scenes. And of course, there's the little Easter egg of secret cargo from Rebels that kind of builds into this whole thing too, and so we're putting our trust into things that we can't see. And, it's, call it hope, call it faith, call it whatever you want to in the rebellion, and in that greater cause of things that I think is truly something that hits me really hard. And I know just from watching Rogue One, it was another one of those things where it was like, oh my gosh, like all of these sacrifices that were made that we never saw. It makes, Luke complaining about going to Tashi Station to pick up power converters, and this kid, like all of the sacrifices that had been made up to that point on his behalf to be able to go forward and take those final steps. And it's eye-opening, Mary. It's pivotal. It's all of these things that we're talking about. And it all comes down to that word of trust.
Which is so hard with all the dynamics at play. Go ahead, Mary.
Well, one of the things that I had written down when I did my rewatch yesterday was Luthen said to Mon, "We've all been bent by secrecy," which is exactly what all three of us have just talked about.
Bent is a good word to describe that. It's so unique. And Clea, I think I could do a whole podcast just on Clea, like not just an episode, but as a whole. And just like she's just brilliant, and she really is the backbone of everything, which is so cool. Jay, what's the next conversation piece that you would like to bring up from Welcome to the Rebellion?
Well, I think building on that idea of trust, and just putting your faith into things that you don't know what the outcome is going to be. For example, just witnessing the birth of K2, and watching that whole sequence with here, Cassian had witnessed these KX droids wreaking complete destructive havoc on Gorman and throwing people and throwing things, and just the sheer might of this. And then he's like, hey, I've got all the pieces, let's do this. And then as soon as K2 wakes up, Cassian's ready, but yet there was also that layer of trust there. And as we know, they became the best of friends. So taking a leap of faith in that trust, I think, is a big message in this too. And, and again, as I called it before, call it faith, call it whatever you want to call it. And, also putting aside fear and walking through the fear instead of avoiding the fear, I think is a big, big part of this episode as well.
Absolutely. Very well said.
Thanks.
Industry. I want to build on that. But I think you pretty much nailed it. I don't know that. What I want to talk about, my word was symbolism or symbolic. And boy, it must be time for me to go back to school because symbolism was jumping everywhere to me. When this opens, there's a scene where there's a lot of scenes of the Senate, from a little bit far away. And I don't think I've ever noticed so prominently how this thing is hovering above water. I want to talk about water on Welcome to the Rebellion, because water is one of the premier symbols in literature of baptism, of rebirth, of change. When the episode starts, and I'm going to pull it up here on my monitor while we're chatting, it's dark, and you get to see the beneath, like a reflection of the Senate building. And to me, that's because the Senate is a reflection of what it was originally intended for. It's a farce. There's no diplomacy. There's no true political manifestation of what the galaxy wants going on. It's not happening. It's a reflection of what it was supposed to be. The rain is sprinkling down, creating these beautiful puddles that continue just to circulate throughout this pond itself, because the water of the change is somewhat stagnant, and it's happening, but it's very, very slow. There's little puddles because the rebellion that Luthen has started, and that Kanan Jarrus and everyone has started, and all these different pods, it's happening slowly around the galaxy, but nothing has happened yet. And it's just like a couple of seconds. But I was so captivated by that. I thought, wow, everything we need to know about this episode, about this series, is happening in these few shots of water. And I just loved it.
That's fantastic. Another one that comes to mind too, Dan, when you said that, is when Cassian breaks Mon out of the Senate and he steals the speeder and they bust out of that window. Mm-hmm. They go out over water.
Yep.
Well, they actually dip into the water. I was thinking the exact same thing.
And they shake it up. That's the actual baptism. That's the actual part. Because there's other shots of the water too, where it's very, very still and nothing is happening, and it's sunny out, because the Empire wants you to think everything is normal. Everything is normal. Look over here, not at what's happening in Gorman, unless you give us the side. But when he leaves with Mon and he dips through that water, he dips through the facade of the Senate, and they come out of it completely changed, because whether he knows or not, he's about to fully commit in ways he never expected. And she is a completely different person now. Still a leader, still powerful, but there's no more hidden agendas. There's no more hiding who she actually is. She is reborn and literally rises to the clouds to find a new trajectory for herself and the galaxy.
Yeah, she looks back, through the back window. She looks back at the Senate building, and they really linger and looks down on it, and they really linger on that. And then as she turns to really face the camera, basically, but as she turns away from the Senate and looks forward, and the look on her face, it's like, yeah, here we go. This is the beginning of this.
It's so good. And even like talking about it now with the two of you, oh my. I could babble on and on, but I will spare you. Mary, what's the next one you have?
Well, talking of still sort of on the trust and the secrecy is Erskine, her aide. Mm-hmm. And I know people have said this in other podcasts, and I think Dennis, you and you and Dennis even said something about it at one point. It's like the casting of the actor to play Erskine was so on point with the animated Erskine. It's like, it was kind of crazy, but we don't, I guess we don't really sort of know that he's part of Luthen's group, and he's been watching over Mon since the wedding. But when she finds out, she feels so betrayed. And she says she knows about being betrayed, but he never leave, even though she tells him to leave, kicks him out, he still never leaves her side, metaphorically. He is always there, within touch of Clea or in touch with Luthen. Mm-hmm. He immediately figures out who Cassian is. I'm not sure. I don't remember if they've ever seen one another up to that point. But once Cassian says, I have friends everywhere, then they're off and ready to roll. And he's always there. He's right there. And then, as Jay said before, rolling right into season 3, episode 18, Secret Cargo of Rebels. He has not left her side. So I don't know that we really paid that much attention to Erskine up to this point. I guess that shows a good caretaker, good protector, that they're in the background, they're in the shadows, and when we need them is when we see them. And I think that's what happened with him during this entire episode.
And there's a comfort to that in the midst of all this chaos, I think.
Yeah, she goes back to him. I mean, she realizes the look on her face when she sees him again after everything that has transpired, getting her out of the Senate building. Mm-hmm. It's like a bulb, just, an epiphany. I see what you were doing. I understand. I forgive you and thank you. Even though she didn't say any of those words, it seems like that's what transpired between them, just, with a look.
And isn't it funny that as pivotal as these two are to both seasons of Andor, I believe this is the first time they're on screen together.
Oh, really?
It must be, because she didn't recognize him.
When
he came.
Yeah, Cassian. Yes.
Yeah.
Cassian. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It makes me think, as you're talking about this, and it's kind of an underlying thing, what we've been talking about with hope, and I go back to that quote that Leia says, hope is like the sun. If you only believe it when you see it, you'll never make it through the night. And so to your point, Mary, as you were saying about Erskine, and again, all of these other things that were happening without knowledge of either Mon or, whoever, even Bail knew a lot of things, and he understood how important Mon was to this whole effort, and that he needed to stay behind. Like, she's like, come with me. And he says, no, we're not ready yet. Yavin's not ready yet. I need to stay here. There's still work to do. Even though she so desperately wanted his support and all of that, he knew that there were still more things to take care of. And I don't know if either one of you have read the Alexander Freed novel, The Mask of Fear. But
I just finished it, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it is incredible. And, and you appreciate so much more, I think, too, everything that's happening here versus what you see in the novel, and just how everything sort of even ties together even better. But yeah, Bail is another one that for me is just such a standout. And I'm so grateful that we have been able to explore more of his story, his character arc, everything that he's gone through. But it's interesting that at one point in this episode, when Bail had set up the extraction team for Mon, and she says, do you trust them? And he says, well, yeah, as much as I can. She's like, have you ever met them? And he said, well, I can't. So, but then she asks him the same question in Rogue One. Mm-hmm. And, can you trust this informant? Meaning Leia, I would trust her with my life. So, I get the chills when I think about Bail, cool. And, the relationship that he's built within the rebellion, and the role that he's played, again, kind of behind the scenes sort of a thing. And then when we realize the speech that Leia gives in A New Hope, my father, all of the things, it gives it so much more weight.
And I just Erskine, as you initially point out, Mary, I connect he and that's why I brought up Cassian earlier, because I connect them together because when the three of them are together, it's so unique. Because Erskine and Mon Mothma have this bond, and when Mon Mothma says that this is the most, what did she say, betrayed she's ever felt in her life, and she says, and that's saying something, and we know, like, that's heartbreaking. And you see, he doesn't fight it. He respects her so much that he won't even defend himself, because he knows in his heart of hearts he believed he was doing it for the right thing. Whereas Cassian doesn't really know these people, but you get the sense that he has a sense, which may be something that Bix has sort of leaned into, which ties into when they had that encounter with that Force healer earlier in the season. But it's so cool. And Erskine, as you mentioned, is cast perfectly. Every time I hear his name, I sort of chuckle, because that's the same name of the doctor in Captain America that gives Steve Rogers the super soldier serum. It's even spelled the same. So that just kind of throws me.
Oh, wow. I never made that connection.
Yeah.
Me either.
Love that.
Jay, what's the next one you would like to bring up for us?
Well, for Cassian, again, he's just so, he keeps saying, I'm done. I'm done. I'm out. I'm done. And he keeps saying, even to Luthen, he says, I've done all of this on my terms. And Luthen's like, but have you really? You've been everywhere I've needed you to be. And so in some ways, I feel for Cassian, because he thinks he has autonomy in this whole thing, and he thinks he has ownership of all of the things that he's done. And in some ways, yes, he does, but in other ways, he really doesn't. And I think for Cassian, he's at a point right now, again, a pivotal point where, yeah, he wants to be done, but why does he want to be done? Because he wants to give it all up so he can be with Bix. He even tells her, we can go away. Like, we can leave this place. We can go away. I'm done now. I'm out of this. I'm going to tell Draven in the morning before it gets too complicated, and we're out of here. But everyone realizes what a role he plays. So he's almost like, to borrow the term, the chosen one for the rebellion, in ways that, Anakin was the chosen one for the Jedi and the Force. And there were things that come along with that you really don't want to have to do, but yet, you're thrust into this position. And so for Cassian, it's so difficult for him, because yes, he wants to do the right things and he wants to contribute, but it all kind of started by accident for him. And he got into this sort of by accident, and now he's in it to win it, literally. And it's not until, Bix leaves that I think he's finally all in. So again, a very pivotal point for him.
It's a great point. There's the whole thing with Bix, I think, is an important aspect of this. And when I'm watching this and Cassian is saying these things you talked about, I don't ever believe that he believes it, but I think he wants to believe it. And I think he's trying to convince himself. But she knows. When she left him, I guess we can talk about now. When she left him, the first time I saw it, I felt it was just sort of like out of nowhere, and it kind of bothered me. But as I've rewatched this, I realized, no, they were planting seeds. And what she's doing is showing more love than most people could do, because she's willingly saying, as much as I love you, the Empire has to stop. And you are such a key cog in this machine that if I take you away, it's not going to last. That's how important he is. And I don't know if I ever really appreciated that until I watched this for our conversation today. She is willingly giving up her family and to reunite with him, because I think she wants to believe that they will reunite. Of course, she wants to believe that. We sadly know how tragic that is. And as a side note, I've never been someone who ships, and I never thought that Jyn Erso and Cassian were going to be a couple. So this just solidifies that there was just mutual love and respect on a human level because of what they were fighting for at the end of Rogue One. But this is why it sets up the heartbreak at the end. And I'm going to spoil one of my future ones, I guess, sort of, but it ties into what I think, was it you, Mary, that brought up K2 being built, or was it you, Jay? I can't remember. It was Jay. At the end, after she gives her monologue and he's running around looking for her and realizing that she's gone. The first thing that we are given is K2. And that K2, it's like a passing of the torch. This relationship leaves, and then this inanimate object, this, cybernetic machine, comes to life, and it imprints on Cassian, looking at him first like a baby duck, and comes into the world with violence with a blaster pointed at him, whereas Bix leaves with love. And it's just kind of cool because it makes when K2 dies in Rogue One, or is, I guess, expired or whatever. I don't know if he can die, but it makes it even more sad because in many ways this ornery, violent droid that's honest to a fault sort of doesn't take the place of Bix, but it is the closest thing he has to companionship once Bix leaves, and it happens instantaneously. And that really hit me on this viewing as well.
Well, the first thing he says is hello, and the last thing he says is goodbye. It's crazy.
Good call. Excellent call.
You're breaking my heart, Mary. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
That's
K2
awful.
is definitely one of my favorite droids in
cool.
all of Star Wars, for sure. But, and it hits home even more, too, that you realize how short-lived their relationship was.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you get the sense in Rogue One that they've been together for years because they're just so seamless as, a relationship, even though, Cassian constantly gives K2 gruff about everything. And K2 just takes it. But, they're just like the odd couple, they're just like an old married couple. And you think that they've been together for so long, but they just fit like two crazy little puzzle pieces that were just meant to fit together.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh gosh. I want to talk a little bit more about symbolism. There are two I'm going to bring up, just because I know that we're running short on time and there's so many things to talk about. I really like the scene. It's let's see, I wrote it down. It is at 13. If you watch this episode and go to the timestamp 13:10, it's an image of Luthen standing in his black cape or cloak underneath the Senate building on the very left. And Mon Mothma is walking away dressed in white because they have very different approaches to how they're handling things. Same goals in mind, but very different tactics. And it just kind of shows how lonely and isolated they both are. But Mon Mothma in her white garb is still very much on the side of relationships, where Luthen is really based on results. I don't think he's anti-relationship. I just think that he has chosen a different way to make things happen. And you need him. You need his approach. But I'm constantly fascinated by that. Juxtaposed with at the end, when Cassian wakes up in bed and he's out of focus, and the side of the bed where Bix was is completely clear, and he reaches out and she's not there. And I love that because it isn't until he realizes that she's gone that he comes into focus. And I think that was the point, right? She believes he can't be focused on the rebellion, which he has to be a part of because he's split. And then once he realizes and she's gone, he has to focus on a different thing. And it's even so cool that he's standing in the circle of their home, and he's completely centered with life behind him flourishing. But he's only there because he can't go inside the home, because his home is out there, allowing for the galaxy to experience nature and life in all of its glory.
Wow, that's, incredible. And I didn't even think about the focus and the camera work, but this entire series, cinematically speaking, and the way that they've done things is just mind-blowing. And so that focus that you talk about is so incredibly poignant for this episode. Absolutely. And, Mary, we were talking about, your shirt that you're wearing with the Andor symbol. That's exactly what Cassian is representing when he's standing in that circular doorway of his home, and it's standing on the precipice of whatever his future, ends up actually being, which is crazy to think about. But, your point, Dan, with the black versus the white, I want to touch upon that just really quickly. So and I understand, and I totally get where you're coming from on that, because, Luthen has always been in the shadows.
Yep.
And so it makes sense, that he's wearing this darker color. But yet the only time that Mon is covered up, I guess you could say, from her white garb is when Cassian is trying to get her out of the Senate, and he puts that coat over top of her to kind of hide that. But yet, how do we see her represented usually in her character? She's always wearing white.
Yep.
And Leia is the same way. She is very often wearing white. And so, white as a symbolism of purity and hope and wisdom, and all of those things. So I think that's an excellent point to symbolism that you made with all of those things. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. And building on that cloak thing, when she and Cassian finally leave the Senate building, she's got the blue garb on that all the senators have, and she tosses it off, and I think she steps on it. What a great symbol that is.
Mm-hmm.
Getting rid of this pretend concept of liberty and walking a new path right before she goes through the water. Oh boy. Thank you for coming to my nerdy TED Talk.
Love it.
And just taking the Andor symbol one step forward, I mean, if you look at it, it eventually morphs into the rebellion symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So it all rolls together. But yeah, it every time I see him, that one set where he's standing in the center there, and the fact that they made that a circle, that the entry, the home is sort of all round, the entry is a circle. I mean, it's just, there's a lot to that, I think, to show that everything's coming around. We're all, they're all in it together and so forth. So
there's a lot of Tolkien in that too. It reminds me a lot of some things in Lord of the Rings.
Hobbits. Yeah.
Interesting. All right, Mary, we probably only have time for one more each. What is the top thing we haven't discussed that you'd like to bring up?
Oh my gosh. That's
I know.
hard. I think the fact that once Cassian gets Mon to the safe house, she recognizes that he has been here before, that he's familiar with this place and he's comfortable with this place. And she says, I'm not sure how to thank you. And he says, make it worth it. And, and then from there, he's taken Wilmon back to Yavin and K2SO to Yavin. And so that kind of goes one way. But then we're told that the Gold group is going to be responsible for getting Mon to Yavin, because I know a lot of people were concerned that was not going to mesh up with canon and with Rebels, as we mentioned before. And so one of the things that we did, like, it was funny, the first time we watched it, Chaz and I were sitting there knowing what was coming up, knowing that the speech was, that we'd gone through the speech and they were getting Mon out, and both being huge fans of Rebels, that we're like, okay, how is this going to roll in together? Because we had like a couple of days before that actually aired, that 3-arc air, I sat down and watched Rebels. I'm like, okay, let me see if I can watch this, mesh together. And then right after that, those 3 episodes were over with, I rolled right into Rebels. I went right back to watch it again. And they really did a seamless kind of, right into the next thing. But, that the whole, one of the other things that has just been a sort of a ribbon and a ripple through all of these has always been, again, we've done this and I've sacrificed this. And like Luthen saying, a sunrise I'll never see. And it's always sort of on the next group of, we've done this, so make sure what we have done is not in vain and it has been worth it. I think we saw that in Rogue One, and we see it all the way, into A New Hope, and to roll through, like to finish up Andor and to roll right into Rogue One, and then from there roll right into A New Hope. It's like a whole new trilogy to sort of consume and look at very differently, as they all were saying as they were doing their pressers, prior and while Andor was being shown. It's like you're going to see all of this differently, and so Cassian saying make it worth it. I think that's one of the things that probably stuck with Mon all the way through to Return of the Jedi, and beyond. Are we making it worth it? Or are we doing what we need to do to put us all into a better place?
It's such a great line and so perfectly placed that I think we all needed that. I'm so glad that you spotlighted. And I'm also glad because I haven't rewatched that episode of Rebels yet since I've seen these. And now you're making me realize this is appointment viewing because it's so important. Plus the fact that Genevieve O'Reilly is Mon Mothma in both iterations of the character, I think gives it even more credibility and more pathos.
Totally agree. Yeah. And what a great job, Mary, of highlighting that, as Dan said. And again, it's passing the torch, as you said, Dan, making it worth it, making the sacrifices of those that came before you count for those that come after you even. And I'm so glad that Genevieve O'Reilly got a chance to portray this on screen, because as we know, her portrayal of Mon Mothma was cut from Revenge of the Sith. And so now she's really getting that spotlight, which I'm so thankful for that. And
she, as I said last week, deserved and should have gotten an Emmy nomination for Best Actress.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what I was going to say. Yes.
Well, and Diego Luna, really, I mean, you've got a whole star-studded cast here. I mean, Stellan Skarsgård. I mean, Denise Gao. I mean, they've all just been Kyle Stoller, amazing. But tremendous. Of course, we're just a little bit biased, I guess, when it comes to that kind of thing.
It's true. We are biased, but I also think that we're discerning critics and that we know good work when we see it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we love Star Wars, obviously, or wouldn't dedicate so much of our lives to it. But Andor stands out as the stake of Star Wars. It really is. It really is. Truly. It's another level. Well, Jay, what is the last one that you want to bring up? What key idea have we not talked about that you think needs to be discussed? I'm looking forward to it.
That little things matter.
Okay.
And little things can make big differences. And when I say that, I just mean the fact that, again, going back to that idea of so many people working together behind the scenes and how all of these threads are interwoven into this amazing tapestry of what is eventually the rebellion, and able to bring peace to the, better peace to the galaxy. Is it ever really in peace? But,
right.
But the idea, again, the whole focus thing, when we first get to Yavin, it's very blurry. And then you see everything become very clear. And Vel is going through all of those blasters on the table. And she recognizes one and she says, "Who belongs to this blaster?" And then you just see Melchi just kind of over here. And I love that, because not only is it like, oh, yay, Melchi, we're getting more Rogue One tie-ins, but the fact that it's the blaster that Cassian used during the Aldhani heist and then gave it to Melchi. Again, it's like passing that torch. Mm-hmm. And it's those little things that matter. And, and you can't discount one small thing just because, and that was even mentioned in here too, that small things make big differences. I can't remember who said it or where it was said, but at any rate, just that idea that everything is tied together and everything matters.
Yeah, everything matters. Every ripple, to go back to the beginning, has a connection to something else. I'm so glad you brought up that connection too. I don't think I realized that. It's been so long since I watched season 1, or I saw Rogue One, but it's been a few years. I to my detriment, I have big gaps when I watch these, because I maybe it's because of being a teacher and reading certain books every year for what seems like the majority of my life. And I become desensitized to them on occasion. And I don't ever want that to happen, but that's just me. So I'm so grateful that you both are bringing in these connections that I think are so pivotal to embracing this overall mythology itself. So I appreciate that. The last one I want to bring up hasn't been talked about really yet, and it's Mon Mothma's speech. So I knew one was coming. We all knew one was coming. And the first time I watched it, I thought I was taken out of it a little bit. I thought, okay, here's the speech. Undoubtedly, when this was being written, when Genevieve O'Reilly studied it and prepared to perform it, they knew the gravitas of what was being expected. How this was just a key inciting incident, a climactic moment, actually not inciting, but a climactic moment in the history of Star Wars and what it means to break off from the Empire. So it's almost like watching it through jaded eyes, thinking, okay, now they're going to tell us the speech. And I wasn't into the moment, even though I appreciated its power. But then I got over myself and realized, okay, don't think about what is the power, the magnitude of this, and embrace the magnitude of this, if that makes sense. And I had goosebumps. The language, the performance, her moderate but important gesticulations with her hands towards the end, and how they superimpose it with everyone's reactions, and the ISB frantically trying to cut the power and cut off the feed so that people won't see this, because they know this is going to be a spark that's going to light a massive fire of change that the Emperor doesn't want. I guess I wish that Palpatine would have somehow, they would have at least given us a shot of Ian McDiarmid during this, although he's not in this series, which I think is unfortunate, but maybe they thought it would sort of take away from the level of the verisimilitude that is contained in this, because the Force isn't a big deal in Andor. It really isn't, besides that Force healer conversation. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, what are you trying to say, Dan? What I'm trying to say is this speech is very on the nose and very important. And the more I think about it, the more I watch it, the more it moves me. I guess, like when I'm watching something, I don't want to think, oh, they're going to be didactic. This is the key thing I'm supposed to pay attention to, because that takes me out of it. And I start thinking about how it's made. But when I get rid of that and I just watch it, the impact is unforgettable. Does that make any sense at all?
Well, as Jay said, it's pivotal.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a pivotal moment. And when one of the notes that I made watching it again yesterday was the music. While she is giving that speech, how the music starts here, and as she becomes more adamant about what she's saying and she's putting her feelings into it, the more the music increases to a crescendo kind of a thing. And then as soon as, she says, Emperor Palpatine, it's like the music stops, everybody stops, the feed goes down. It's like everything just stops at one time. Mm-hmm. And, both what we are seeing as a viewer and what's happening, there. And it's like that is the pivotal moment. That is when everything shoves a whole new direction for the rebellion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the music, because I noticed that as well. And as you said, the crescendo, and then it just stops. And I get goosebumps too, Dan, just listening to this. And I love the way that they orchestrated this with Bale enacting Article, what was it, 252? And he even repeats, okay, this is, you don't interrupt a senator, yada, yada, yada. And then as Mon is starting to speak, you can tell, we saw some of the scenes before that of her practicing in this, and she's pacing back and forth. And so, she was painstakingly making sure that the words that she chose were the right words to say. And I pulled something out. It's just, the death of truth is the ultimate victory of evil. And she calls the Gorman massacre unprovoked genocide. She calls it right out. And then the senators are starting, there's a buzz. Some are with her, some are against her. And then she goes on to say, when truth leaves us, we become vulnerable to monsters. And then, as you said, Mary, calling out the largest monster of all, Emperor Palpatine. But as you mentioned, Dan, Palpatine's absence is kind of felt in this way.
Yeah.
And, and Dennis and I are actually rewatching the Clone Wars, and we're on the Mandalore arc with Duchess Satine. And there's a scene where, the Palpatine is basically saying, we're going to just, intervene on your behalf because this is the best thing for you. But yet, and I love the fact, though, that when Mon's pod goes out into the center, it's so slow.
I know.
And you're just waiting to hear exactly what she's going to say. And she, again, is just balancing over this precipice almost of either this is going to go the way she wants it to, or she's going to crash and burn. Either way, it's going to make a big difference. And as Luthen said, it will burn very brightly. And indeed it did.
Well, wow. Well said. Thank you for coming to Jay's TED Talk. That was brilliant. That was cool. That was cool. I like that too. You made me think about how it's framed as well from the shot from above. And it's hard not to think about Yoda and Palpatine fighting in that chamber, you know, a decade, more than a decade before that. Yeah, the speech, I think, I love characters that just shine the light on truth. She had to hide for so long that as she tosses out that Senate coat after the speech, she's unshackled and unburdened from hiding under this lie. Look, the truth matters whether you like it or not. The truth is real. And I am not going to hide from it. I'm going to call out what needs to be said. And there need to be truth tellers in the galaxy. There need to be truth tellers in the real world. And it's just incredible. And at that moment, and Jay, I think what you just said made me realize this. I never would have said this before, but I see Mon Mothma as an equal to Palpatine in power, in influence, in prestige. One is through honesty and compassion and a vision for a better tomorrow. And one is all about himself. And boy, oh boy, is that amazing. It elevates Mon Mothma, who is already just an incredible, unforgettable character because of Genevieve O'Reilly, but it elevates her to a level that I had not considered before. So thank you for giving me that perspective.
Oh, well, you're welcome. And I feel like I'm with you, though, as far as her equality in that way, even though, you know, we've never thought about that before. It truly is. And it just, wow. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Well, for them to take what really seemed like such a minor, and was a minor character in Return of the Jedi, and, you know, we know she's a leader. We can tell that she's a leader in that movie, but we don't know. I mean, you know, we're just following our core three people, you know, through the original trilogy. And then for them to pick up that character, and then really show how important she was through everything is wonderful storytelling. Mm-hmm. And there were so many great interviews, and during all the press, I mean, they did pressers from a week before that, you know, it dropped until 2 weeks after Andor finished. Like, they were continually, and I know it was because they're prepping up for the Emmys and so forth, but I think they really enjoyed being together, and I think they really enjoyed telling their stories. And when Genevieve O'Reilly talks about how she approached that speech and all that went into it, and how, I guess at first perhaps it wasn't going to be truly written, but just sort of alluded to. And I think she was the one who really, you know, got them to, she's like, you have to write this speech. I have to give this entire speech. This is important. And then how, you know, being by herself, basically, her and the crew, as she gave it on a green screen in that pod. I mean, I think it makes it, even bringing in the real world, makes it even more amazing to watch on the screen.
Yeah, how it was made, for sure. And I'm glad that they did make that choice, because I feel like sometimes our imaginations will make things better, you know, just because of how we all put our own spin on it. But I don't think anybody could have made the speech better than it was, because of the impact it had and how it was performed and written. So bravo.
Yeah. You know, to your point too, Mary, I mean, just thinking back to Return of the Jedi, when we first got our first glimpse of Mon Mothma, and all we got was, many Bothan died to bring us this information. And then she's just kind of like looking off into the distance, and then gets kind of brought back to reality. Well, yeah, at the time it was like, oh, that's just so melodramatic. But, you know, now you kind of look at that and you think, she's seen a lot. Like, they've been
Yep.
through a lot. I mean, how many, like, she's just thinking, like, here's another sacrifice that's being made, and how much weight that gives to everything else that's come before it, and so you just appreciate that, even that little snippet just a little bit more. At least I know I do.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, I have a feeling, or I imagine this is going to be universal, but let's get our letter grades for Welcome to the Rebellion. Mary, please give us your letter grade and final thoughts.
Well, I think this one has to be an A+. It's just, there's so, as Jay said again, it is such a pivotal time. It was so eye-opening for everybody. That fulcrum of all of it. I mean, the symbolism, I think this episode was a culmination of 1 through 8. And then it propelled us into those last 3 episodes to get to Rogue One. And just this episode by itself, I still do not see how Genevieve O'Reilly did not get an Emmy nomination amongst everybody else. But it's just masterful. I think they edited it so craftily that you just sort of seamlessly went from one thing to the other, to different viewpoints, and you just sort of saw how the rebellion was evolving through everyone's experiences. It's just such a great episode.
Absolutely. Here. I can't disagree with any of that. Jay, what letter grade and would you give this?
Oh, spoiler alert, A+ as well. And to echo everything that Mary said, I mean, you were spot on with everything that you said. And I can't really add too much more to that, other than just that it was eye-opening for me to talk to the both of you as well, and to get just even more insights, because that's one of the things that I truly appreciate about being able to do podcast episodes and talk to fellow fans, is that, there's so many more of those insights to be had, and just the revelations and things. But again, the A+ goes back to, once again, all the things that you said, Mary, and just the cinematography and the way that everything was presented. And as you said, Dan, the usage of the symbolism and the focus versus the non-focus, the music you pointed out, Mary. I mean, everything about this episode. And I mean, truly, Andor has been a water cooler kind of a series for Star Wars, that I think everyone that watches the series truly feels that this is the epitome of good storytelling. And the way that, even though there's not lightsabers and there's not the Force, as you said, Dan, except for the Force healer, it's still quality storytelling. And it's so important to tell these stories that, I don't know how we were ever doing Star Wars without them, and now that we have them, it's just such a gift, truly.
Absolutely. Yes. This is elite storytelling. This is masterful storytelling. This is art. This, like many of these episodes in this season, is pure art that has beauty, that has function, that has meaning, and that advances the overall mythology of Star Wars to an incredible degree. This is, of course, an A+. I'm here with 2 experienced, excellent educators, and if I were not going to give this an A+, I think you should both take away my rubric, because come on, it doesn't get better than that. And yes, I don't know that I would have believed a while ago that I would enjoy a Star Wars story as much without lightsabers, just because I just love lightsabers and the Force and all that. But this is showing us that if you've got good characters and a good vision and a good story, that's what you need. And that's what we have here with this excellent, excellent episode.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
Mary, Jay, it is such a pleasure to share the microphone and share a cup of coffee here on Coffee with Kenobi with the both of you. Mary, thank you again, as always, for being who you are and what you bring to Star Wars fandom, and just your support of me and the show. I can never thank you enough for that. And I would please let everybody know where the best place is to reach out and chat with you about all things Star Wars.
Well, I'm always lurking around on Coffee with Kenobi's, CWK Cafe, obviously. On Instagram, I'm probably the most active, and that's just Mary N. Chaz, MaryNChazz. And I'm on Twitter X some, not a lot, but it's just Mary Perdue, and it's like the chicken, Perdue, not the university is what I tell people. But I'm always lurking around on CWK Cafe. So anytime anybody wants to, do a private message or whatever, I'm there.
Love it. And Jay, again, it's been far too long since we had you on the show, but I love reconnecting and chatting with you, getting your insights. And also, I remember the very first Celebration podcast stage. Coffee with Kenobi was the very first podcast to be on the Star Wars Celebration podcast stage. And I remember you helping me and Corey passing out prizes. And you've always been such a great blessing to me. I truly appreciate that. Please let everybody know where they can find you in Podcast Stardust.
Aw, you bring warm feelings to my heart, Dan. Oh my gosh. Yeah, those are some great memories for sure. And so thank you again for having me on the show, Mary. It was wonderful to talk to you as well. And anytime you want to hit me up to come on the show, Dan, please do so, because it's always such a pleasure. But you can most easily find me a couple different places. So on the podcast with my amazing co-host, Dennis Keithley, we are at Podcast Stardust and all the usual suspects. So Facebook, Instagram, you can download and listen to all the shows on everywhere from Spotify to YouTube Music and Audible and everywhere in between. And then if you want to catch up with my cosplay adventures, you can also check out my Instagram page at j.snipscosplay. So, I do Ahsoka from the Clone Wars, 2 different versions of Hera, Force Sister Inquisitor, my original concept Mandalorian, and much, much more. So right now taking a little break for the summertime and some travel and that type of thing, but we'll be firing up the cosplay train here come late August, early September, but you can always find my work over there.
And Jay's cosplay is elite.
Amazing.
Even if she wasn't a good friend of mine, I would still say this without bias. She is an A+ there's no doubt about that. You got to follow her on Instagram.
Wow, that means a lot, Dan. Thank you so much. Seriously, that means a lot.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.